All right, today we're diving into a development for Cardano that's, well, it's more than just an update. It's a potential bridge to trillions of dollars in regulated finance. We're talking about programmable tokens, and they solve a really fundamental conflict that's been at the very heart of blockchain for a long time.
So think about how Cardano's native assets work right now. They're basically like digital cash. They're free, they're unrestricted, totally permissionless. And that's one of the platform's biggest strengths. But then, you've got the entire world of traditional finance. Think about things like company shares or regulated stablecoins. These assets have to follow rules. They need really strict controls over who can own them and who they can be traded with.
And right there, that's the big paradox, isn't it? How can you build a system for all these regulated financial assets on a platform whose main feature is its total lack of restrictions? For a long, long time, this was a massive hurdle for Cardano really making inroads into the traditional finance world. And the solution, as it so often does in this space, comes straight from the community. It's a proposal called Cardano Improvement Proposal 113, or CIP-0113, and it lays out a brilliant framework for a whole new kind of asset, the programmable token.
So, how does this all work? Well, the best way to get your head around it is to think about a shift from holding an asset directly in your personal wallet to keeping it in a special kind of smart vault.
Let's get a proper definition down. A programmable token is still a Cardano native asset. That part doesn't change. But here's the twist. Instead of sitting in an address that your wallet controls directly, it's held inside a smart contract address. And this smart contract, it acts as the vault, and more importantly, it has the specific rulebook for that asset baked right into it.
And this is the absolute key insight. You still have ownership. Your wallet holds the keys to this vault, so you have the authority to move your assets around. The big difference is that every time you try to make a transaction, it has to get checked against the rulebook first, so you're still in control, but you're working within the guidelines that asset requires.
Okay, so how does this smart vault actually enforce anything? What's going on under the hood when you decide you want to transfer one of these programmable tokens?
It's basically a three-part security check that uses a chain of smart contracts. Think of it this way. First, there's a gatekeeper script. All it does is check that you're authorized to even access the vault. Simple. Once you're clear, it calls a general manager script. This one handles all the common sense rules that apply to any programmable token, like, say, making sure it's being sent to another valid smart vault. And then, finally, the general manager calls the specific rulebook, the custom rules for that particular asset. Is the person you're sending it to on the whitelist? Is your account frozen? That's where all that logic lives.
Now, the genius of designing it this way, in layers, is just how efficient it is. By splitting up the general rules from the specific ones, the whole system avoids doing a ton of redundant work. This means you get a huge reduction in transaction fees and a system that can scale much, much better. It's a really smart design.
So we've gone through the how a little bit, but honestly, the why is where this gets really exciting. This isn't just some clever piece of tech. It's about unlocking an entirely new financial world on top of Cardano.
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This isn't some theoretical problem. Listen to Jeremy Williams from MembersCap. They're a reinsurance fund that's already working with the Cardano Foundation. For his industry, he says this kind of control isn't just a nice to have, it's an absolute, non-negotiable requirement for them to even consider operating on a blockchain. And once you have that control, suddenly all these doors just fly open. We're talking about tokenizing shares in private companies, creating stablecoins that can actually comply with regulations, enforcing KYC and anti-money laundering rules, and even having the ability to freeze or seize assets when it's legally required. This, right here, is the bridge to mainstream regulated finance. So, what's next? What's the road to getting this adopted look like? Because, having a brilliant idea is one thing, but actually bringing it to life across an entire ecosystem, that's a massive undertaking. It's going to need a huge, coordinated effort from the whole Cardano community.
And I mean the whole ecosystem. A feature like this touches every single layer. You've got the smart contracts at the very base. Then you've got indexers and wallets, which all need to be updated so they can understand and even show you these new kinds of assets. And then, of course, you have the applications, the dApps, that need to integrate all this logic so people can actually use them.
The path forward is going to happen in a few key stages. First, the community needs to officially finalize the CIP-0113 standard. Then, the really important work of building developer tools and a kind of playground environment begins, so people can start experimenting. After that, you've got the super critical legal and security reviews, and only then can that long process of ecosystem-wide integration really kick off.
So you might be wondering, what's the single biggest hurdle here?
And you might think it's the smart contracts themselves, the stuff running on the blockchain. But actually, the real challenge is building out all the off-chain infrastructure. Think of all the software tools that wallets, exchanges, and developers use to talk to the blockchain. Making those tools simple, powerful, and easy to use, that's the real key to widespread adoption.
And that kind of brings us to our final thought for today. There's no doubt this innovation is a massive step towards institutional adoption and real-world utility. But it also surfaces a really fundamental question. Is adding these layers of control and permission the necessary evolution for crypto to hit its full potential? Or is it a compromise of those core ideals of permissionless freedom that got us all here in the first place? Definitely something to think about.